What is going on, everybody? Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the California Underground Podcast. Tonight, we have a very special guest, Jess Tapia, who is a California teacher who fired for standing up for her beliefs and standing up to an ideology that we all know has sort of become very prevalent in society now, and you can't question it. You talk about it. But Jess did one of the bravest things, and she stood up for it openly, talked about it, and it unfortunately cost her job. But I think the best news is that her story is being played out across Tucker Carlson. It's being kind of broadcast. I want to kind of take the spotlight away from her. Jess, what are you doing tonight?
Good. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And as always, is my trusty co-host, the researcher in the West, Camille. How are you doing tonight?
I am good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing great. I think this is going to be a good podcast. Uh, tell her story even more. So, Jess, why don't you just start off and tell us who you are?
Sure. First of all, I am a follower of Christ. I am a wife. I'm actually to my high school sweetheart who I met at the school I was fired from, and a mother of three. I have a 5, 3, and 1 year old. And I still consider myself a teacher, even though I was, recently fired. I've really been teaching all my life, even before I had a teaching credential, whether it was teaching swim lessons or coaching basketball, or tutoring, on the side as a college student. I've always been teaching, and, God made it really clear to me that that was my calling. Yeah, that's a little bit of who I am.
Can you say what school it is, or is that public knowledge? What school specifically?
Yes, it is, Harupa Valley High School in Harupa Unified School District.
So why don't you walk us through the story of sort of how you got where you are right now and what transpired? Just take your time and walk us through it and tell us your story.
Yeah. Yeah, so really interesting how it all transpired. Um, I think people often assume that there was like a situation that took place, like on the job or with students, and it really wasn't that at all. So last May, a week before school was going to be let out for summer, I realized on my Instagram that I was getting really awful comments out of nowhere, which was totally abnormal. And I'm like, who is this? And I start clicking on the profiles, and I realized, oh my gosh, it's students. Like, students have found my page, and they've found things they don't like. I'm very
Hmm.
vocal about my Christian conservative views, you can say. And they clearly were not in line with or in agreement with some of the things that I've posted. And they just started leaving some pretty awful comments. And I was just block, delete, block, delete. I don't want students on my page. And after deleting one of them, the the person came back on and said, "Too late. I've sent this into the school." And so I'm thinking, okay, um, I mean, if they're serious, I guess we'll see what happens. And pretty quickly after reading that, I think like the next day, I was pretty much pulled out of class. Like
Hmm.
midday, it was probably noon, and I was pulled out of class by one of the principals at the high school and walked up to the office, and the assistant superintendent was sitting in a room waiting for me and let me know that something had been brought to their attention via social media and they needed to investigate it. So I was being put on paid administrative leave. And obviously, I know what they're talking about at that point because I had seen students had found my page, coming onto my page, leaving some pretty awful comments, and so I kind of knew what was going on. Um, so again, this was a few days before summer break, so I was already like, in the summer mindset, my summer started early, went off on summer break. And during the 2 months of summer, I'm wondering what's going to come of this, but really thinking it's going to blow over. Like, it's going to blow over. They're going to call me back to work. And it's about a week, maybe 1 to 2 weeks before the new school year was going to start in August, and I hadn't heard anything. So I reach out to the district and I'm like, am I okay to come back to work? Like, the new school year is going to start here soon. And the assistant superintendent responded and said, no, as we said we would, we've been investigating and we need to have you come in for a meeting. And I was like, okay. And so I came in and I was totally, like, blindsided and shocked. I had a stack of papers sat in front of me with multiple allegations, and was asked to go over them and respond to all of them. I had two union representatives with me, and I'm literally just sitting there, like, pretty much shaking almost out of my chair. I've taught for 6 years, have a completely, clean record as a teacher. I'm very professional about what I do. I have phenomenal, reference letters from admin and coworkers, and this was not something that I could have ever imagined, or anyone who knows me would ever imagine me being in, having allegations made
Mm.
against me. So I'm freaking out, but then as I start to read them, I realize what's happening and what's happened. As I'm reading through them, literally all of them were crafted based on what was found on my social media. And so it's almost like, as I read through them, I, like, start to be able to breathe again, because again, I realize what's happened. And so I respond to all of them. Half of them were not even legitimate allegations. And, my union representatives are sitting next to me saying, yeah, that's not an allegation. You don't even need to speak on that. Half of them were completely false. And the other third of them were things that, and I'll give an example. So one of them was that I broadcast sermons to my classes. And I looked at the district personnel and I was like, I'm just going to go ahead and share with you how I think that this was even crafted, or how a student might have come up with something like this. I'm a PE teacher. On Mondays, we go to the track. I call it Monday Run Day, and I give them some sort of running activity on the track. And that's the one day I allow them to listen to something, while they're getting their laps in, whether it's music or a podcast, whatever they choose. I walk around with them and I do the same thing, but I don't have in headphones because I need to be vigilant. So my phone is just loud enough for me to hear in my pocket, and I walk around. And so I said, yeah, if a student walked by me, they might have heard Jesus is Lord. They might have heard hallelujah or amen. I don't broadcast sermons to my class. I know very clearly what where my lines are when it comes to bringing, my faith and religion into my teaching. I remember having a whole class on faith and public education when I went to college to become a teacher at California Baptist University. So, I explained that to them. And anyway, so that's an example of one of the ones where it was like true but not true. And anyways, so after that first meeting and, responding to all of those, I felt a lot better, but they needed to take time to consider everything that I responded to and decide, I guess, what to do next with me. And they had made it very clear that I had really upset students. Students felt very disrespected by my personal posts on my personal social media, where I don't even say I'm a teacher, where I work, none of that. They, went on their own, found my page, and I don't know. I'd like to assume they wanted to maybe see my kids that I always talk about, or see my horse that I talk about, and, just happen to find my views, you know. And so after that first meeting, I was called in for a second meeting. And that's when, there was a huge turning. So in the second meeting, I was essentially told, you're lucky we're allowing you to still have your job here. Like, just barely are we allowing you to continue to teach here for us. And here's the game plan. You're going to be watched for 45 days really closely. And in those 45 days, we want to see change of behavior. And I'm just like, what change of behavior? I've been the same teacher for 6 years. I have nothing to change in terms of behavior. So I'm just already so lost and confused as with expectations that they're putting on me, to come back to. And then they get to directives, and there was like 7 or 9 very clear directives. And the first one was that I had to refer to students by their preferred gender or pronoun. And I just kind of like knew inside, I'm not going to be okay with that.
Mhm.
And then the second one, and this wasn't written, they vocalized this, so I had to clarify with them. They said that I had to withhold that information from parents. And again, they vocalized that. It wasn't written down. So I wanted to be very clear with them. Like, are you asking me to lie to parents if I were to ever have a student that, is now telling me they think they are, or they would like to be, the opposite gender? I have to, act like I don't know that, and, even purposefully lie to a parent if I was ever asked or put on the spot about that information regarding their child. And they said, yes, it's for the student's privacy and it's the law. And I think I just like sat back in my chair, like, what in the world? I mean, you guys literally ask us as teachers for your district to uphold honesty. But apparently that's situational, because we're sitting here now and you're telling me to not be honest in this situation. And so another one of the directives was that I had to refrain from talking to students about God or the Bible. And that's something I made very clear to my district, is if and when a student has ever come to me with a question about God or the Bible, I do answer that. And they said I couldn't do that anymore. And that just didn't sit well with me. That didn't seem right. And so, at that point, I had 3 directives that I just knew sitting there in that meeting, like, I'm not gonna be okay going back to work and knowing that these are on me and that I have to comply with these. I mean, I won't. And so after that meeting, finding out these expectations and directives upon calling me back to work, um, and mind you, I was written up for misconduct also, for, again, my personal posts on social media that students happened to find. And so after that second meeting, I was I was not okay, to say the least, and they wanted me to just show right back up to work on Monday. And so I ended up taking, I think it was a total of 3 months of stress leave from work, trying to figure out what to do next. um, do I put my head in the sand and go back? And I imagined too what that would look like, and it would have just been so awful. It would have been like I would have to completely like strip who I am to walk onto school campus and just kind of be a robot and do, act and do and say what the district wants me to, and not, follow my convictions and my faith and my beliefs. And I just knew I couldn't live like that. And so, during those 3 months, I'm just praying and, seeking counsel, trying to decide, do I resign? Again, I knew I couldn't go back under these directives. And but there was also the consideration of, rather than just walking away from it all, which I've learned since my story has gone out, a lot of teachers have done and are doing. They're running into this and they're just leaving. And I don't know, something was just stirring in me, and God was calling me to face the beast, I guess you can say, and just tell my district, I'm ready to come back to work and do the job that I've always done to the best of my ability, as I always have for my students. But I need you to know these are the directives that I cannot and will not be complying with, because they are not in line with my beliefs. And so um, I had half a resignation letter written. I was at the end of my stress leave. And I remember one day being so stressed out because I needed to send this letter in already so that the district knew I was not coming back, but I just could not get it finished. I have 3 little ones, and it's so hard to sit at a computer and type out a document. And I remember just like stressed out talking to my mother-in-law, and she was like, Jess, there's a reason you haven't been able to finish this resignation letter. Like, just trust God, be a little more patient. And so, I just paused and prayed, like, okay, please give me a clear sign, like what I'm supposed to do next. And I had a divine appointment of a phone call with a couple in Washington. And they actually are just starting a group called Righteous Law. And it's kind of similar to the group that's representing me, Pacific Justice Institute, where they're going to, represent people of the faith who are, essentially being discriminated against because of their religion and beliefs. And they found me on Instagram, and I had connected closely to the wife, and she was like, can me and my husband call you on Sunday? And I was like, yeah, I'd love to, talk with you guys. And it ended up being a 2-hour phone call. God was just in it, all over it, and gave me my very clear answer that day, that I was not to resign, that I needed to just vocalize to my district where I was at with these directives, and kind of, so to say, put the ball back in their court. So I emailed them, and it was time to essentially come back after winter break. Again, I'd been off for 3 months trying to figure out what to do next. Sent them that email. I broke down the 3 directives they gave me that I was like, no way, not doing that. And let them know why those 3 directives, I could not, in good faith do. And so they said, thank you for letting me know. We need to call you in and have a religious accommodation meeting with you to see if and how we can accommodate your religious beliefs. And they said it would be interactive and their attorney would be there. So that was my 3rd and final meeting with the district in January, mid-January. And so I go into that, and it was something else. Their attorney probably had like 3 sheets of questions, just questioning me up and down, left and right, on my faith and on my religion. Where do you go to church? What even makes you a so-called Christian? What do you study, or what do you read? How often do you do these things? What in your faith or your Bible, or whatever you want to call it, says that you cannot respect students' preferred gender or pronoun, that you cannot withhold this information from their parents, and so forth. And really, I mean, I'm sure you know what I'm saying when I say they seem to ask the same question over and over in 500 different ways, sort of thing. I
Yeah.
think really trying to challenge me and see if I would change up my answers and so forth. But I just continued to stand my ground and stand in my faith. And you could just tell, looking at them as I responded to each question, they were not getting the answers they were wanting to hear. And at the end of that, they said, is there anything else that we need to know about that you can't do in your position? And I said, yeah, while we're at it, I'm a PE teacher, so I'm in a unique position. I oversee a locker room. So I'm assuming that if you're putting this directive on teachers to respect students' preferred gender and pronoun, you're going to be asking me to let biological males into the locker room, and I will not do that. And they said, well, then we have a whole other issue because you have to. That would be discrimination if you don't. And it's against the law. And that was just like probably really the final like straw for me. I mean, obviously I had already made my decision and, put the ball back in their court in terms of, this is me, this is who I am, this is my faith that I'm going to stay true to. Are you going to allow me to continue to teach or not? And that's what that third meeting was them deciding. And really, so that last question was probably what helped finalize their decision of not having me return. So about a week after that meeting, I was just waiting to hear back, and they allowed me to email them with any accommodation ideas that I had, and I did. I was doing my best the whole time to keep my job. I even offered up, you can put me at the district office in an equal paying position where I don't have interaction with students, like if that would help accommodate me, which really is not what I would have wanted. I would have probably been miserable and not lasted because, I became a teacher to be in students' lives and be a role model to them. And but again, I'm trying to keep my job, and I offered that and a couple other things as accommodations, but kind of knew in my heart and soul, like, there's no way that they can accommodate me if these are supposed laws and ed codes, because the only real accommodation would be allowing me to be the only teacher to walk around campus that didn't have to, refer to students by preferred gender pronouns, didn't have to let trans into the locker room and so have you. So kind of knew what was coming is what I'm getting at. And yeah, a week after that third meeting, the religious accommodation meeting, I got an email from them with a packet that essentially said, we cannot accommodate your religious beliefs, so we are releasing you from employment, official January 31st.
Wow.
So,
And here we are.
and here we are.
And here we are.
Yeah.
That is quite an incredible story. As you're going through it, there's so much that I just felt like we can kind of get into. I think the most shocking thing to me was you're talking about that meeting. It sounded like it wasn't a religious accommodation. It was almost like a deposition to show like you really weren't a Christian. And it's amazing that you have to go through. It seems like they kind of concocted this to do in a way that can prove, oh, you're not really Christian. You're just claiming that you're Christian. When it should be good enough to just say, I'm Christian and this is my belief.
Great.
End of story. First Amendment, freedom, your freedom of exercise. And the fact that they're trying to like prove that you're not as you claim to be, that's shocking to me. Was it that you mentioned you were part of a union? During all this, where was your union rep? Did they step in during any of these religious accommodation meetings or step up in your defense or send anyone to help during this time?
Yeah, so they were at every meeting with me, and I mean, it felt great to have them sitting next to me and thinking that they're, on my side and trying to fight for my job like I was. But, truly in the end, it felt more like they were in agreement with the district and more so on the district side than mine, because I mean, there was a couple times where they themselves advised me, just compartmentalize your faith and make it work. Essentially just leave your beliefs at the door and do your job for 8 hours a day and pick them back up. And I was just like, wow, you guys don't get it. Like, I'm not willing to do that, and I shouldn't have to. So I mean, in the end, I'm getting that question so much, and I don't ever want to seem like I'm like spewing hate or anything on my union, which I mean, that could be like a whole other podcast on the union, the teachers union, but
let's do that.
yeah, in the end, did they do anything for me? The answer is no.
Sounds like they did the bare minimum to show up for.
Yeah, they showed up to the meetings.
It's what's interesting to me, and I think this is maybe the bigger issue that a lot of people are, kind of noticing right now, gender ideology and what's happening. Is it in a way, ironically, become its own religion? And the fact you go in and you say, well, I'm a Christian, I this doesn't beliefs, I can't do this. It would be beliefs which are protected by the Constitution, but this ideology transcends your belief in Christianity. And that's becoming almost a universal belief in the United States right now, is that this gender ideology that's being pushed so hard is no one can question it. No one can question it. There is nothing that can stand up against it. It doesn't matter if you're Christian, it doesn't matter if you're Jewish, if you're Muslim, it doesn't matter. This is like the ultimate thing. You can never do anything negative towards this movement. And I think, unfortunately, your story is is that even as a devout Christian, and I can tell, you talk about it, that you are a devout Christian, that even with the conviction of your faith, you went in there and they still said, you're not Christian enough. This overrides your conviction in Christ. And that's kind of terrifying, that's where we're at now, is that this ideology has almost become, in a way, its own religion. And all other religions and other beliefs are kind of inferior to it, like a step down. Right. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like. And what's so interesting too, and someone had pointed this out to me a little while back, and it's spot on. I sat through that religious accommodation meeting where, they had all kinds of questions for me about my religion, and then, as you talk about this transgender ideology that's being pushed so hard, if they're so, keen on it and believe in it, and why aren't why aren't they being questioned? I mean, why don't they have to prove prove this belief and ideology that they have, but I have to sit back and, the very religion that our country was founded upon, I have to, try to, I'm blanking on the word, but try to prove to them, and it just feels so backwards, so upside down, so evil. I mean, I knew right away in the meeting, like, this is spiritual warfare for sure. This is spiritual warfare. The devil knows that going after children is his best bet. And it's really sad, the amount of adults that are just going along with it and not seeing it for what it is, which is exactly that. And I think they try to scare us. I know they tried to scare me with the word law and the word ed code, but I don't care. Like, those words aren't going to scare me into submission and leaving behind my faith. And that's like really a huge message that I want to get out to the world, and really specifically teachers and parents, and don't let them, fear you with these fancy words, um, and I had to really catch myself as well because I felt a ton of fear through this. I mean, um, I my family was supported by my teacher salary for the last 7 years. I was
Hmm.
very fearful of losing my job, and I had to just make the decision, am I gonna let my fear be in, my employer who pays me my paycheck, or is my fear gonna be in the Lord where it should be, who really is my ultimate provider, even if I don't see how he's gonna do it? And so, I had to catch myself in that fear and make sure that my fear was where it needed to be. And I just reminded myself, of the verse that says, "We work not to please man, but the Lord." And so I wanted to make sure, the decision I made in this trial, this situation that I was being faced with was gonna please him and not worry about what the district was gonna think of my decision, or my principal, or my coworkers, or anyone.
Yeah, it's like you were talking about, way to kind of spin it around and say, well, no one of this other ideology had to prove. And in law, there's
Mhm.
this idea of burden of proof, where it depends on which party it is, they have a burden of proof to. And it seems like in your specific case, you had the ultimate burden of proof. You had to prove everything, as opposed to gender ideology burden of proof. It's just, if you say it, then it's true. Um, Someone in the
Right,
chat said,
feeling.
"This is exactly what we went through in healthcare." Questioning multiple times, I'd like to see teachers come together in a class action or a joint suit. It's clear religious discrimination.
Yes.
Um, there is something at the beginning of your story. You said this all sort of started. Students had come and found your Facebook page, and they saw your personal views. To me, that seems dangerous. That it kind of is reaching out from the school and into your life, because that
Mhm.
robs you of having personal views, where
Exactly.
you can't be a person with
Mhm.
individual thought outside of school and outside of work. And school,
Right.
oh, in your private time, you're not allowed to think like
Yep.
this. And I know a lot of teachers who are usually worried about this idea of like, well, what if students see what I say? But it's terrifying that you're a victim of these ramifications of
Mhm.
I don't know, did you mention teachers also, just students?
From what I know, just students reported
Okay.
their
So
feelings to the district.
you had students who now can go out and, if they don't like a particular teacher, they can kind of like
Yep.
track them down on social media
Yep.
and rat them
Exactly.
out to supervisors and get
Yep.
them fired for stuff that they believe or do in their personal
Yep.
life. And
Mhm.
that's ultimately terrifying
Mhm.
for so many teachers to fall in line
Yep.
with this
Exactly.
ideology. And it's not just
Mhm.
like your union rep said, compartmentalize your faith for these 8 hours and go home and you can be whatever you want. That's
Mhm.
not the case. You can't do that. You can't compartment what you want, because it
Right.
follows you home, and a student can just go to your Facebook page and see your own personal messages,
Mhm.
and you can't be who you want to be at work. So it
Right.
really has kind of spread out life, correct?
Yes. Yes, and that really hit me in my second meeting, um, hit me hard, like, really, really hard. I drove home from that meeting, like, sobbing. um, I was an absolute wreck when my husband came and met me in the driveway. He said he'd never seen me like that before, and just, like, kinda looking back, I I think it's because it was just the moment that it really hit me that again, like you've probably seen me, quoted in articles, but it was just the moment that it really hit me that I could not continue this career that I, went to school for 8 years to become a teacher, and I couldn't continue it anymore, um, and be a Christian. And that was heart-wrenching. I never got to say bye to my students. I it came to such a sudden and quick just stop, and it was really hard, when that realization hit me. I was an absolute wreck, and that it's kind of why, for the longest time on my stress leave, my husband was even pushing, like, just resign," because he saw the absolute turmoil that it caused me, and he was just like, I want us to move on from this. I want you to be okay again. I wanna just, see where God takes you next. Like, let's just move on. Let's just move on." And, I was kind of nervous to tell him, like, sorry, God's given me, the clear answer. I'm not supposed to resign. I need to, speak up to the district. But thankfully he was so open-minded, and it made total sense to him, to do that advice that I had gotten from that couple that day on the phone call. And I really think it was a divine appointment with them. And, so yeah, we're both glad that that is what I did. And it's just, yeah, it's been amazing to see God just use my story, for his glory. And I've already had so many teachers, message me and say, they feel emboldened, and, they're ready to die on this hill next. And it's easy to say that though, but when it comes to the moment of actually, like, making that decision and really putting yourself out there, it's a whole other story. But really at this point, it's the only way that we're gonna be able to fight this beast that we're facing, and, this evil that's just totally after, our children. It's not gonna be just, it's not gonna happen just from me and my story. It's gonna take a lot more teachers, a lot more parents, but I really do think it's possible, and I'm staying very hopeful. So, yeah.
Some more, couple more questions, but I wanted to ask
Yeah.
Camille if she had any before I hog all the questions in time.
Well, just real quick, something I'm in disbelief over is this whole push to push out parental knowledge. I have 3 high schoolers and I homeschool, but I would absolutely want to, well, no, not would. I always want to know what they're up to. I want,
Yeah.
what they're doing when they're out with their friends. They're still my kids. They're still my responsibility. I want to know if they're, what's going on. And I can't believe that there's just this extreme push to be like, no, we need to hide these things from the parents. We need to hide these things from the parents.
Mhm.
My kids are kids, whether they're in high school or not, they're still kids. And they don't really have a right to so much privacy when it comes to me, when it comes to my
Mhm.
husband, like, no, I get to know whatever I want to know what's going on in your life. I get full access to your phone. They don't really have that much. Like one kid's got some social media, but if they were on social media, they're not on social media for a reason. But like, no, I have full access to it. And if you're going to be on
Mhm.
that social media platform, then so am I, because I'm going to watch what's going on. So I
Yep.
just can't, I'm just in constant disbelief still that a big push in public education is we need to keep this from the parents. We need to keep this from the parents. That's amazing to me.
Yeah. It's mind-boggling to me as well. And I'll tell you, what they, the reason, I guess you can say, that they gave me for this push for student privacy. They said, "Do you know that when some parents find out, about their child's preferred gender or pronoun, or, desire to, become something that they're not, um, they they sometimes get kicked out of their house."
Yeah, I'm
And
sure
so
that's
that's
happened. Like, I don't doubt that that has happened.
right. But so
I
we make we make a whole entire law to keep all parents in the dark now because there's
Exactly.
been 2% of cases where the parent kicked the child out of the house. Like, we are teachers. We are, hired to educate. Why are we taking on, these responsibilities of a parent? And I mean, even at this point of like, I don't know, like the CPS or law enforcement, like we don't have control over what happens in the house. We get the students and we teach them, and what happens at home, I mean, that's on the parents. And obviously, yeah, if the student comes, we're mandated reporters. If they come to school and a teacher thinks or sees that there's, something going on at home that's harming the child, then we're mandated to report that, and we do. But again, we're again keeping parents in the dark over these what ifs, and it's
Right. I mean, is that
parents.
the stance on illegal drug use? I mean, really, there's some parents who are going to kick their kids out for doing drugs or for who knows what, because there are
Right,
crazy parents out there. So is that their
right.
stance on everything? Don't tell.
Yeah, great point. Great point. Gosh, yeah, I I would love to ask them that. And it's just like, we need to they love to use the word, equality. I mean, if we're gonna let's have equality here. If we're gonna keep this from the parents, let's keep it all from them, or if we're gonna go ahead and share with the parents that their child is, bullying or was found with, substance on campus or is failing their class, then they also need to know that their,
Yeah.
student is asking their teacher to now refer to them as the opposite gender. That's like a big deal and something a parent needs to know. This is a mental and emotional issue that we all know can often lead to very, serious repercussions. And so yet we're hiding that, are we going to wait until the student is harming themselves to now tell the parents, "Oh yeah, well, we did know that, you know, Jimmy was feeling like and wanting to be this." Like, we're gonna wait till it's too late. Like, it just doesn't make sense.
There's a question in the chat for you that says, fellow teachers in your district, religious or not, speak up about these issues, or has it been complete silence?
Um, I don't know if I can say I've seen other teachers speak up about these issues. I've had several teachers in my district message me. Um,
Mhm.
I'll share with you guys something really interesting. Last week, there was a day I got the same screenshot from probably about 7 teachers from my district, and it was a screenshot of a training that Harupa Unified decided to push out onto teachers as of last week. Really interesting timing, and that there are 2 modules that teachers must complete by the end of this month, and they are one is on LGBTQ, how to help LGBTQ students feel safe, and I forget the exact title, and then the other one was um, transgender students. And so I had so many teachers reaching out, sharing that with me, and telling me, we don't want to do this. Like, we're with you, Jess. Like, we're not in line with this stuff. They're like asking me questions as if I know. If I go through with this training, does that mean that I'm telling the district that I agree with and comply with their directives regarding, LGBTQ and transgender students? And I'm just like, I mean, I I don't have those answers, but I mean, I'm going to advise you to, stand your ground and stand in your convictions. And um, so, as far as I know, there's a pretty good sized group forming of teachers that are not going to be doing the training. One of them has informed me that she did speak up to the district on the training and told them she would not be doing it, and they called her in for a religious accommodation meeting. Um, I need to look back in my messages and see if I can find it as to when her meeting is. I think it's this week. And I mean, I to be completely honest, she's probably going to get fired like I was. I mean, it comes down to them finding out about you. And that's what it is. I had these same beliefs my first year of teaching, when I wasn't tenured, and I am, or I was now, but my 6th year of teaching, they just found out about me. They found out that my beliefs are not in line with their directives, and therefore I'm canceled.
Yeah.
I'm gone. I'm not allowed anymore. And really, this could have happened to me in my first, second, or third year if they had found out then. So it's just it's really bizarre. It's really bizarre.
Um, I did have a question on the. You know what? They should stop calling it a religious accommodation meeting. They should just call it a religious inquisition meeting, because at this point, it literally is a religious inquisition.
hmm
So you said you've been teaching for 7 years, correct?
This happened at the end of my 6th year of teaching. I had been a substitute teacher like 2 years prior to that.
Have you seen, as a teacher, have you seen this ideology? This is something I try and wrap. Is this like a chicken and the egg situation where sort of society and the powers that be are kind of like all of a sudden the new vogue ideology to kind of push, and then all of a sudden students kind of latch on to it because it's the
hmm
new vogue thing that maybe on TV or with artists and music and social media. Have you saw like a rise of that because of external pushes to make this happen, or was this something that like I'm always kind of genuinely confused. Like, remember this being an issue when I was a kid in school, and I don't know other people who said this was a big issue when they were in school, but now it just seems like they make it seem like
hmm
80% of kids are transgender now, and we have to accommodate 80% of kids. Like,
Right.
what's the progression you
Yeah.
saw in the past 6 years to now, where they're laying off teachers because?
Yeah, there's definitely been a gradual progression and acceptance of it. I graduated high school in 2010, and I remember going through high school, there was one transgender student, and um, I forget what it was exactly, but the student, like, I remember one, like some sort of prom court that um, she, so biological female student, um, was making, the switch to be a male, one um, like king in prom court. And I remember myself and like all my peers being like, hold on, wait, what? Like we all know that that's not really a guy. Why did she win king? Like it was so bizarre for us, but like, no one was really speaking out on it, so we just kind of all internally were like, that's kind of weird, but okay. Um, and then from there, I mean, now if I were to, compare that, which was like probably 2010 to, 2023, I mean, probably half of the, roster for voting for king is transgender students. It's just so accepted now, and I really do think it's great, largely a push from media, from social media, um, and parents not really raising their children with any sort of like foundation and morals, and so they just pick up what's around them. They just pick up what they're constantly seeing and hearing and listening to, and being pressured into by peers, and it's just sad because we know the truth, and we know that those things are not gonna lead to happiness and purpose for them in the future. And yeah, it's definitely it come to this point where it's so prominent now that, like you said, it's almost of all of these other, you know, religions and what really a lot of people are continually like commenting on my stories and stuff, common sense. And I just kind of laugh because I'm like, you guys, there was no common sense accommodation though. I couldn't just tell my district, I'm not going to do these directives because common sense like that.
Right.
They would have been like, so I had to, and I mean, I personally get my common sense largely from my faith and my beliefs. So yeah.
I was distracted because either you have a cat or a ghost behind you playing with the curtain, and I couldn't see what was moving the curtain. So I was like, "Are we?
I'm not.
We're taping an actual paranormal poltergeist going on right now on this podcast."
Oh my gosh, not my cats. I'm actually at my friend's house because this would not have worked at my house. My kids would have heard me talking and they would have never gone to sleep. So my husband's putting them to sleep and I drove down the freeway to my friend's house. So I don't even know what's happening behind me either.
Yeah, the curtain forth. I'm like, I don't see what's moving it.
I'm just kind of still annoyed. Sorry. I'm just annoyed for you that when they called you in with the attorney that they weren't like, by the way, you should also bring an attorney. I don't know. I'm frustrated for you.
Yes, that's exactly where my husband was at. He was like, I mean, still to this day, he's like, that's not fair. That was not right. You should have had someone there with you as well if they were going to have their attorney present for every meeting, which they did, every single meeting. She was there and she was really the most prominent one talking in all of them. And
that's intimidating for you.
Yeah.
Because I mean, you actually did this, but I think we always think that if we're faced with a situation that we're going to be the hero who stands up, the house is on fire and we're going to save all the kids. And but then when it comes down to it, you kind of sit there in shock and you're just like I picture that if that happened to me, I'd be like, I would have walked out, but no, I wouldn't have walked out. I like to think I would, but I wouldn't have. I would have sat there and been like, oh my gosh. And I would have just gone into shock and then, just try to answer their questions.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, I mean, it was an experience of a lifetime to sit across from, my assistant superintendent who, as far as I knew, had a lot of respect and adoration for me, which he did vocalize, but yet said, now I'm very disappointed in you. Now I'm, upset with you. And so they all voiced to me their new opinions of me, but it's him, and then it's my principal, and then it's their attorney. And so, I mean, I'm sitting across from these people that, I look at as these are like, my higher ups. Like, I just have to do what they say, but then hold on, the things they're asking me to do, I can't do those things, and I won't, and I don't want to, and I shouldn't have to. And, now I need to make a hard decision and make the hard decision. I mean, it's worth it. I mean, I look back and I try to imagine if I would have not made this decision and just kind of put my head in the ground and just gone along with it. And I think I would be miserable, and yeah, just be another teacher, like you said, that just fell in line, with it all. And society and culture is constantly changing and morphing. And so at this point, that's what teachers have to do. We constantly have to change and morph along with it. That's not going to happen from me. So,
well, pardon my language, but you have more balls than most men. I mean, Phil and I actually had a conversation earlier about people not standing up to, we all get on the keyboard and we're like, I'm a patriot and I'm a fighter and but then when it comes down to it, no. But you actually stood your ground and you actually, that's literal fight. Like, and I think you even say, this is the hill I'm going to die on. And we were talking about that exact phrase earlier about,
Yeah.
you know, people are throwing that around. This is the hill I die on. But then when they're actually faced with it, they turn around and they're like, no, I don't want the recourse that's going to happen with this.
Yep. Yeah. I actually would love to share where that saying came from. It actually came from a principal that I worked for during my time at the district, and her and I connected really deeply in the faith. And I remember having a conversation with her one day, and she wasn't super clear about what this hill was, but she gave me that phrase and let me know. She said, "Jess, there is a hill I will die on." And I knew she was telling me that there is a situation, there is something that she would stand up to and lose her job over if it came down to. And this, she said this to me probably at this point, this was about 2.5 years ago. And it just like stuck with me since then. And now I see why. Now I so clearly see why it stuck with me, because then I was faced, then I was on that hill that I know that she was, referring to without being super clear to me about it. And yeah, I mean, I think it's time. I think it's time that we are actually willing to die on this hill, because change is not going to come if we just resign and walk away from the hill. Change is not going to come that way. Kids are not going to be protected that way. Parents' rights aren't going to be preserved that way. We have to put up a fight.
I'm sorry, I was giggling before because the chat is buzzing about whether it was a cat or a ghost in the background, but
there's multiple cats in this room.
Very
Okay, so
there's multiple cats in the room.
Multiple cats, not ghosts.
Ghost cats.
The one thing I think about this whole gender ideology is my personal view, and for whatever it's worth, I'll start off with this. I'm a devout, me and my wife go to mass, we pray, we talk about the scripture, we are regularly faith, and I think we've grown in our faith ever since we've been married. I'm also at the same cognizant of the fact that we live in a country where the idea is you have the liberty to choices as adults. I should say, as adults, you have choices of what you want to do. There's a difference between our countries based around personal and individual. People can choose their lifestyle and what they want to do, and patient. And I think we've crossed the Rubicon of it's no longer, oh well, we're free to do whatever we want. Now it's we're free to do whatever we want, and you have to do it with us too, whether you like it or not. And I think that's where a lot of this from is this idea of I want to live my life the way I want to live it, but you also have to participate in my lifestyle. And your story is almost a perfect example of that, where you want to choose, you've chosen in your life to be devout in your faith and be a Christian. That's your liberty to choose so. Somebody else may choose, I want to follow this gender ideology. But our society, and especially California, you don't have the protection or the freedom to be who you want to be as a devout Christian without the gender ideology forcing participation upon you. And I think that's really sort of the scariest part of where we're at right now in society is you're just forcing people. And I think it's going to take a lot more people like you to stand up and go, no, I'm not going to be in this ideology that infringes upon my lifestyle or how I want to live my life.
Right.
That's sort of,
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
What you're saying is sorry, it's just I had to scroll and find it because you're reminding me of something I posted, I don't know, maybe a month ago. I said, I'm not surrendering my beliefs to help you validate yours.
Mm.
And that's, really where it seems like we're at. Like you said, forced participation. But the issue with that is if I participate in your ideology, it means that I have to strip of my own beliefs. And yeah, I'm not going to do that, and we shouldn't have to do that. And it's what's unfortunate is so many people are turning it into, a hate thing or a phobia thing, and it's not that. It's not at all that. um I love everyone equally, and um but I also maybe have a different definition of love than what a lot of people nowadays have. We see that saying, love is love. Like, what does that even mean? That doesn't define love at all. I don't believe love is love. I believe, love is truth. I believe God is love. I believe God made man and woman. I believe the most loving thing I can do for someone, to someone, is affirm them in who, God made them to be, and always do my best to tell them the truth, you know, and there's just too many definitions of love out there. And yeah, we're in quite a mess.
Yeah, it's become manipulation. Like, it's no longer
Mhm.
love. Like, I remember thinking that, and I don't remember the exact talking points, but during the height of BLM, when they were talking about,
Mhm.
if you love us, you will X, Y, and Z. If I said that to my husband, if every day I changed if you really love me, then you're going to do this for me, then it's just going to become a really sick, manipulative relationship
Yeah.
where he's not going to love me anymore, because he's going to
Yeah.
be like, you're crazy and I can't keep you happy ever. Like, that's not
Right.
love. Love is not
Right.
bowing down to your ever changing emotions and beliefs.
Exactly.
That is not what love
Exactly.
is. Like you said, love is truth.
Exactly.
That is, and truth is not truth is not liquid. Truth is not changing form.
Yes.
Truth is constant.
Yes.
And it's ironic that, back to this idea of forced participation, that one of the allegations that was brought up against you broadcasted sermons, which you didn't, broadcasted sermons to students. That style of forced participation style is unacceptable in their eyes.
Mhm.
Definitely unacceptable. But on the opposite side, the forced participation or ideology, that's a requirement for you to keep your job, as opposed
Right.
to if you were to force participation into Christian sermons or scripture or anything like that.
Yep.
So again, where do we draw the line as to who gets to say who's forcing in what participation? I wouldn't go
Right.
to someone who believes in this gender ideology and go, okay, well, guess what? You're going to mass with me this week. I don't care
Right.
or not.
Yeah.
You're coming to mass with me because you have to
Mhm.
respect that I'm a Catholic and you have to participate with me. That's how I get
Mhm.
validated. It sounds
Right.
ludicrous. Like when you say it like that, somebody from the other side
Yeah.
go, well, no, I'm not going to mass with you. Oh,
Mhm.
you're starting to get it now. It's not,
Mhm.
I'm not asking you to come join or validate my lifestyle
Mhm.
for your participation. So, um, yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
sort of the scary part of where we
Exactly.
are right now.
Definitely. Definitely.
So what's
Well,
next for you? If I
a good segue into what's next for.
Um, I'm not super sure. I'm trying to stay open, to where God is leading next. And like I said, I really kind of knew in my heart and soul that I was gonna wound up fired. And so as I was like prepping for that possibility and just praying on that, I remember praying like, God, if that's the case, like I'll take this story like as far and wide as you want it to go. And me and my husband were laughing the other night because he was like, yeah, God's up there, like, hold my wine because, look at you, like you were on Tucker, which is crazy. It doesn't even feel real. It still feels surreal. Um, but yeah, I mean, it happened, and he's just continuing to use it and take it far and wide. And I'm just trying to stay open to what's next, and humble, and just allow him to use me in whatever capacity he wants me to share this story. And yeah, I'm not sure. I've bounced around all kinds of ideas, in terms of what's next, whether it's, looking into the teaching at like a private Christian school. I mean, I have little ones of my own that really, I'm home with them now. And so they're my main concern at the moment. And if, we can figure out how to make it by with me, just staying home and caring for them and teaching them, then that's my number one goal. But, we'll see if that's going to be something that can work for us with me not working. Um, but yeah, I mean, right now, really, I'm trying to not be super, like, stressed out and overwhelmed in terms of what's next. We haven't even began litigating yet. We're still waiting for this right to sue letter, which is just crazy to me that you even need. I'm like, I mean, I feel like I should have the right automatically when I'm fired for my religious beliefs. But um, yeah, we're waiting for EEOC to give us some letter. But I was told even if we don't get it, we can move forward without it. But I'm assuming it's best to have it, so we're waiting on that. But yeah, at the moment, my focus is just, getting the story out, helping parents become aware, helping teachers know their rights and be emboldened, and stand strong in their faith and convictions, which, mind you, does not have to be Christian. It doesn't have to be Catholic. It can just be, believing in right and wrong, believing in male and female, believing in parental rights, believing in not feeding into lies and confusion that a poor child is being fed or dealing with. um, so anyways, yeah, at the moment, not sure, but I'm looking forward to seeing what is next.
Well, thank you for coming on and sharing your story. And this is a great conversation. It's a heavy conversation.
Yeah.
I definitely applaud you for what you're doing. It's not easy to stand up in these situations. Makes life uncomfortable. I'm sure you're not, uh, you know, I would believe that for probably every person who's come at you from a place of hate, there's probably 10 more who are applauding you, is probably what you
Yes.
found so far.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
we'll definitely be pulling for you and following your story. Is there any place people can go to follow your story and follow you, keep informed, and just
Yeah,
follow what's
yeah,
going on?
I'd love for them to follow me. My Instagram is where I'm most active, and keeping updates on, and I'll, randomly update on Facebook, but I'm really not active on there. So my Instagram handle is Jess_Sayin, SAYINNN, 3 N's. So yeah, on there would be awesome. I'll definitely keep everyone updated as we begin the case, and just keep informing as much as I can. I'm having a lot of teachers and parents reach out, even anonymously. Hey, can you share this, like, on your page anonymously? This is what, my child came home and told me today from school. This is the questionnaire that I'm having to give students. Look at these questions. And so I'm just really using, the platform that God has allowed me to have from this story, and just, again, continuing to inform parents as best as I can and as much as I can.
Great. Well, maybe that's what God called you to do, was voice and to use this platform. So Like I said, we'll be supporting you, and thank you so much for coming on. If you feel like you want, if there's an update or something you want to come back on, open invitation. Anytime you want to come on, let us know.
Awesome.
Yes, thank you for driving down the freeway just to be here with your ghost cats in the back.
Yeah, and for sitting in your haunted house and catching paranormal activity. It's
Yeah, I'm gonna go tell my friend that
No,
that
but
they
really,
have a
thank
ghost.
they
you.
freaked everyone out.
Thank you for sharing everything. It was really great to hear.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to share, and thank you guys for inviting me on.
great. So everyone who is listening and tuned in, if you like this show, make sure to subscribe, like, share, review, all of that stuff that I always say. And the best thing you can do to support this platform is to just share it with somebody. And I think this is a particularly really good podcast that you should be sharing with a lot of people to hear Jess's story. So share it out. And with that said, have a good night, everybody.